Opportunity to meet Bryan, but he's been our state representative since 2008, was it?
Well, but representing Mount Dora since 2012.
Right. So welcome to Bryan Nelson.
Thank you, Betty. We had a town hall meeting, I guess, several weeks ago in fair city of Eustis, and we had a pretty good turnout, probably 40. But what I'd like to do is do real quick. You've got a few minutes, and I'll kind of give you the brief overview of what we did this year. Kind of interesting. Got elected in 2006, and every year since then we've had declining budgets, and not only in real numbers, but in net numbers we have. What I always tell people, when you look at our budget, and you take what we're all fighting today, which is Obamacare, still fighting, even though it's the law of the land. Medicaid funding is what is our 800-pound gorilla in the room. So if you go back 7 years and forward 3, so in this 10-year time period, the Medicaid as a percentage of our budget has gone from 17% within 3 years without the expansion, which we're not doing, it will go to 34%. So as a percentage of our budget, it will have doubled in 10 years. So when people complain that we're not funding education properly, we're not funding law enforcement properly, or the environment properly, tell them, well, here's what's killing us. And it's a match. The state match is about 45 cents, the federal government about 55 cents. But it is absolutely the 800-pound gorilla in our budget. But with that being said, we had a $74 billion budget, so it was the first time we hadn't had to make serious cuts to budgets. It was, but we found out in the last 7 years that we can we can set aside the need or the wants and just take care of the needs. And I think we've done a pretty good job for the last 7 years. Proud of what we've done to accomplish. What I will tell you, a couple of things that I've seen the last couple of years. Love him or hate him, but the governor has done an admirable job as far as our debts. Under Charlie Crist, our debt increase was about $5 billion, and we were on the verge of getting a downgrade as far as S&P. So if you get downgraded, then the interest rates on the money that you borrow goes up, so it costs you more to run your government. Under Rick Scott, our budget, or our deficit, our debt has dropped by $5 billion. So in 2 years, we have dropped $5 billion in debt. We're able to maintain our AAA rating so that we can borrow money at the most favorable rates of any state. One of only a few states that's been able to keep that rating across the board. One of the things that we didn't get accomplished this year, which we've got to go back and fight for, and as a city mayor and councilman, the pension is probably one of the few issues that we really have to address. But I can tell you that when you look at the union membership, they're fighting us at every turn to the defined benefit plan. Anybody in the private sector knows that those defined benefit plans left long time ago. What we're left with, which I think is the right thing, is a defined contribution. That we will put in X amount of dollars into your 401k, and you will match it with whatever you like. But what's happening is we've got some of these firefighters that are able to retire at 52 years old with full benefits, up to 80% of their pay, which at some point will. Right now, as the stock market has made some progress, we're going to get back close to 100% of of what the actuarials say we need to have. But long term, we've got to get to a defined contribution, and we can get away from what could be a ticking time bomb. So, with that, I'll try to open it up for any questions real quick. Well, I know I've got a full program. Anything I can probably answer for you as far as what we accomplished this year. Any questions about any bills? I think it was a good session, accomplished a lot of good things, and we're able to balance the budget without raising any taxes or fees this year. So it was a real good year for us. Yes, ma'am.
I don't have a question about succession, but to get back to Medicaid, how is that going to work with Obamacare? I mean,
Well-
if everyone's got to have insurance,
We did not take the Medicaid dollars. It was $51 billion that they offered up. What was under the Medicaid expansion under Obamacare is it's an all or none deal. There were some things we probably would have taken. For instance, there were some people that are disabled that didn't qualify for Medicaid, but under the expansion would have. We probably would have picked those up. We would have taken a look at parents with children under the age of 18, picking them up. Because we feel like if you're trying to raise a child, you need to have health care so that you can not only take care of the child, but earn enough money to take care of the child. But the way it was set up, it was all or none, which means we would have added, had you taken the expansion, it would have added 1.2 million people to Medicaid. And at a cost of, $51 billion. They say no, it's not going to cost us anything. Well, I think we all know that's not true. But what's happened is, as you look, just happened just yesterday, or maybe it was Friday, we just got the waiver for the Medicaid. So we're now going to be able to go to a managed care for Medicaid. Over the next 10 years, we hope to save about almost $1 billion by putting people under managed care. And so I think we're making progress. We just got the long-term Medicaid waiver just a couple of months ago. So I think we'll start to see, we'll start to bend the curve on what the increases are for Medicaid funding. But it still will always be a big part of our budget, something we always need to be careful of.
can you go into a little more depth on that? You're talking about HMOs now.
Correct.
These people will go into HMOs,
Yes,
which
ma'am.
are going to be privately run.
It'll be,
Right?
yes, ma'am.
The
Correct.
HMOs.
Right.
See, what I don't understand is, I understood that everyone was going to have some kind of an insurance under the
Obamacare.
Care Act.
Yes, that you as an individual, if you meet qualifications, and it could be up to 400% of poverty, you then could qualify for some reduced cost. The other thing one of the things that we did not put in the bill, we had to file a big bill to some things that because of the federal law it trumps state law. We had to align our statutes with what's been passed in the Affordable Care Act. One of the things we did, we got rid of the high-risk pool. It was cost us about $4 million a year for about 100 and something people.
You got rid of them. Where did they go?
Well, they will in 2014. They will go to the policy because everybody now qualifies for health care regardless of your health condition. So everybody will be able to get a policy under the Affordable Care Act. So those people will get that. What we also wanted to address is we didn't want the navigators, which are the people that are kind of the front end on helping you determine which policy you want. We didn't want them to be able to sell insurance. So we had to put in this bill, okay, here's what here's the things that you can and can't do. But if their role in this whole process is, okay, here's the 7 companies that offer these exchange products. And if you want to find out whether your doctor is in the Humana one, or the Blue Cross one, or the Aetna one, they can help you with that. But as far as telling you which policy to buy, they can't do that. You have to have an insurance agent to help you with that. Yes, sir.
On the screen, you see it talks about Common Core standards. I looked at the voting records of people that voted for it, and you, as well as 3 others in this county, did so. And maybe you could, and I know that was a while back when they tried to push it through without explaining a lot. Maybe you could talk about why you would have voted for it, and/or what your thoughts are now that you've learned more.
I would still vote for it. I think that I think Common Core. I mean, we can. I mean, I know there's some conspiracy theories as to what it does or doesn't do. I think the way I see the Common Core is that we want to be able to judge. We want to be able to measure ourselves against not only Florida students and Georgia students and Washington State students, but we want to judge ourselves against Sweden and Germany and Japan. Because this is a global economy. We're not just competing with the other states. We're competing internationally. So, I'm not, as we do a lot of things, we make changes and we have to then, adjust those changes. So I think, as we look at this as a measuring tool, we'll have to make changes. It's just kind of a first step. But I think as we move, forward, we'll see that, okay, these things don't work, and we need to change those things. But I think we want to measure ourselves against the world, because we want to be able to compete against the world.
As you're aware of the Florida, I guess what our budget is, how much is Common Core going to cost the state of Florida for a year?
I don't have a figure for you. Don't know. I mean, we got a lot of I think a lot of people complain we got too much testing now for students, and I think what we're trying to do is get to like the end of course exams for a lot of the courses that we don't have real strict guidelines. And I think one of the things that we did pass that I was real proud of is the bill that gives kids, instead of the only option they had was kind of a college track. We're now giving kids a track, so they want to go to a technical training track to get a skill, to get a certificate in plumbing, electrical, auto mechanics, nursing. So they got a chance to get a job in that track. So that's hopefully that will give kids another opportunity.
Would you foresee having the budget for Common Core? Since it's hitting Lake County in September, August actually, when do you think you'll know what that budget figure is?
I don't know if it's been broken out specifically for Common Core, or is it just testing? I don't. I mean, I can find out. I can call you a picture. We'd be happy to find out.
Right?
What's that?
You voted for it,
Yes, ma'am.
but you don't know these things about it.
By then, no one knows.
Well, $74 million budget. No, I don't know the exact dollar amount. No.
That pushes on the districts, state.
Well, I know that we could ask questions of Representative Nelson all night, but we need to take this moment to learn about Common Core. I think one of the things that I'm realizing is I don't have a whole basis of knowledge about what this is. And I think there are a lot of us that this is a new topic, even though it's been around for years, and it's been going for years. And I was listening to Diane just earlier a little bit tonight. So I think that, this is such a vast issue that I just welcome you. If Representative Nelson wants to stay and be educated as well, that would be lovely. But Evelyn, would you like to come up and introduce our speaker tonight?
First of all, I'd like to welcome all of you. This is a wonderful looking group, and I'm sure you're going to be enlightened, as we all must be, because we are a sleeping giant, and that has to be awakened. Our guest speaker's background as an accountant auditor was responsible in part for her delving into the education, or lack of it, in our school curriculum. Married with 8 children, 13 grands, and 1 great-grandson, she witnessed firsthand the intrusion of the federal government in our educational system, and she began her research. We are most fortunate to have her come to tell us the complete findings and facts of her digging, as she states, what is and has been happening to the education, quote, unquote, of our children, the future of our republic. Please give a warm welcome to Diane Kepus.
Good evening. I don't know if I'm going to need this or not, so you can just tell me, because they tell me I do have a big mouth. I would first of all like to say that there were many of us in Tallahassee this last legislative session, and we tried desperately with the representatives that we met with to put a stall on the Common Core. Because we found that most of the legislators had not read the standards. They admitted that. They admitted that they did not understand what was happening. So we asked for their cooperation in stalling Common Core. We asked for a stall in the data tracking, and we asked for a stall to get a financial analysis. To the best of our knowledge, and this is not conspiracy theory, there has not been any financial analysis done in the country but one. And that was done as a speculation as to the cost figures that were given to them by publishing companies and other people that were being involved in the Common Core. It's a lot of money. What we're hearing back is that the school districts don't have this money. And they're only resourced because Race to the Top did not go to everyone, and the ones that got it didn't get enough. And since they don't know what the cost is going to be, their only resource is to be able to raise your tax millage. Now, there was a bill in the House this last time. No, I take that back. One of the senators had it, to where it would have allowed the districts to raise your millage rate for a 5-year period, another one of these where they'd have to renew them, et cetera, and they could have used the capital for that if you read far enough in the bill. It didn't come out of committee, so that one we didn't have to worry about. The data tracking bill had gone fully through the House, and had gone through the Senate and was back in the House. The only thing I can charge it off to is God, that they walked away from it and the House did not re-sign it, so the bill died. I know Tallahassee likes to tell us we don't have to worry about the data tracking because they've been data tracking our children. But the point of what they've been data tracking in the past, that information, for the most part, stayed right here. And they also needed parental consent to get it. In 2012, President Obama gutted FERPA. Absolutely gutted it. It's online, you can find it, you can read it, and you'll know exactly what happened. They don't need parental authority to do it anymore. They can take whatever information they want to, and they've opened up the levels of who can go for that information. They say researchers. Well, who's defining who the researchers are? Personally, and most people that are against Common Core are against it because it was agreed to before it was even written. Achieve Incorporated presented that to the National Governors Association and the Council of Chief School Superintendents in 2007 as an idea. Charlie Crist and Eric Smith agreed to it. They didn't have anything. They came back to Florida, they talked to the state school board, and I will tell you right now, my personal thought is, this is a good agenda to demand that our state commissioner of education and our state school board be elected, because they don't owe any allegiance to you at all. None. They don't ask your permission, they don't talk to you, they don't have to talk to you. And this is basically, for lack of a better phrase, taxation without representation. We don't get it. Achieve was formed in 1996. Go ahead. I'm going to relate back and then we'll come forward. Karl Marx is behind this. Communism is behind this. Whether you want to believe it or you don't want to believe it, it is there. There is proof. Karl Marx said he would do it. He's done it from within, through our children, through education. The one thing that I find amazing about communists is they are not in a hurry. They don't care if they die before they accomplish what they want to do, as long as there's someone behind them that will pick up the gauntlet and go. And that's what's happened. John Dewey, and you will find that most of the people that have been behind the progressive education revolution since the late 1800s have mostly been psychologists. That's how we ended up with our Ritalin kids. We got the Elementary and Secondary Education Act in 1965 under President Johnson, and I'm sure he thought that he was doing a good thing. I feel in my heart his intentions were good, but it's just gone way past that now. Mark Tucker. Mark Tucker has a lot of influence in the Clinton family. He's been friends with Hillary for years. You can go online and you can find Mark Tucker's letter to Hillary Clinton. It's in the National Archives. It's 18 pages long. And within that letter, he lays out his and David Rockefeller's and some of their other buddies, their plan for the school to work, outcome-based education, which is exactly what Common Core is. Goals 2000, School to Work Act, and the reauthorized ESEA Act under Clinton is what put that into force. That was your starting figure. Achieve, and actually that's the wrong date, it was 1996. You had some of our national governors, some of our legislators at the time, and businessmen who got together and formed Achieve for the very purpose of what we're doing right now. Funded by, of course, Bill Gates. To keep in your mind, in 2006, George Soros gave Bill Gates $30 billion. That's where all this funding's coming from. Mostly. Buffett's in there too, so's Murdoch now. They're all having a good time. But that $30 billion went a long way. Bill Gates, every time you look at anything to do with education, he's funding it. You know, I have no doubt in my mind that all of this is in direct relationship to the United Nations UNESCO. And that's why we're seeing global. Personally, I don't like the idea of my grandchildren or my future great-grandchildren going to school like they do in Japan or China for 8 hours a day, 4 hours of homework, with no family time or no rest time for their minds. I don't like the idea that they're going to be sitting at a computer all day long. This is part of the money too. All our children are supposed to have computers. The No Child Left Behind Act. Now, our legislator may not like what I'm going to say right now. But when No Child Left Behind came out, Jeb Bush thought it was a good thing. His brother was president, it was his agenda. And as long as he was in office, we had No Child Left Behind, and everybody complained. Our kids were getting dumber. They were being taught to a test. Have any of you run across any of our graduating children that if you ask them a direct question about a subject, they'll sit there and look at you, and they won't answer you? So you ask them, did you misunderstand the question, or do you want me to repeat it? No, they're waiting for their multiple choice. And I'm serious. Because how many years have they gone to school, and that's how they've been taught. They've basically been given the answers, they just had to pick the right one. We have dumbed down our own children with the leadership that we have. Now Jeb Bush is no longer the governor. He's decided that No Child Left Behind is no good. We should have charter schools, vouchers, and move on. Now he's endorsing Common Core. Where does it stop? Give me the people. Sir, have you read the standards? How can you legislate something you've not read?
340.
I'm sorry. I mean, I know you guys get a lot of stuff. I know you do. Senator Galvano was gracious enough with us over the tracking bill that when we took it and analyzed it and tore it apart, and read what we gave to him, he said, "That isn't what I intended." Sir, did you not read your own bill before you put it on the floor? Somewhere or other, we have to get control. Do we really have to go through 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 bills every session? It's not humanly possible. I remember a couple of years ago, Corinne Brown put out a bill, one of the 3 that she even got out in the 10 years she was there, for Black Breast Cancer Month. Now, I'm not picking on her because she's black. It's a point of what's the difference between black and white breast cancer. When you cut us open, we all bleed the same color. But if you're there, you're supposed to be doing something productive. We're finding more and more our legislators will not talk to us because they call us conspiracy theorists. Jeb Bush just referred to us as revolutionaries. Why? Because we're asking questions. When I can sit in front of a room full of people like you, and I have a school superintendent for the county, and I have an assistant school superintendent and 4 members of the 6th school board, and I ask the question, have you read the standards? Not one of them can raise their hand. How can you support something that you don't know what it is, but you want to call me a conspiracy theorist? I get my information from hours and hours of research and from educators across this country that have a lot more education behind them than our legislators. And they sat on the validation boards and refused to sign off on them. They saw them for what they were. Race to the top, of course, we all know what that is. But that process that worked, in 2009, our national governors and the school superintendents and commissioners went back to D.C. for another meeting, and that was the first time that they really got even an inkling of what the standards were. We still don't know if they've ever read them. That's when the process started to implement in Florida. Now, the governor will tell you that the standards in Florida were changed in 2012. He needs a better secretary. If you go to the Department of Education and you go to the website that deals with this, it clearly states 2010. The new generation standards, 2010. How far they were, I don't know, but that's their date, not mine. Textbooks, the biddings have been going out. Here again, you've got another problem. You've got Pearson doing almost all the textbooks. And if Pearson's name is not on them, it's one of the companies they own down the chain. Follow the money. Pearson is a progressive. So Blake Pearson from England. Look him up. I swear to you, I don't make this stuff up. I can't, my mind doesn't work that well. Arnie Duncan, if you go looking, you will find the reports from the people that followed him in Chicago. He lied the same as Michelle Reed did on her testing scores. Took them 2 years to figure out what was going on and why all of a sudden the kids were showing failing. Arnie Duncan was fudging the scores. That's what Michelle Reed did in D.C. That's what they did in Atlanta. You know why? Because they put money bonuses to the accountability. Those teachers in Atlanta got a lot of money, and it's not over. You take their scores and you change them so you can get a bonus. And you got to have higher ups involved in this. It's not just the teachers. Linda Darling Hammond. She's one of the writers of the English language arts. She's been a friend of Bill Ayers for over 30 plus years. She's a professed progressive Marxist. Do you know how many professors we have in our university that used to be in the Weather Underground? It's a fact. One of the girls running with him went to prison for 22 years, came out with a teaching degree, and went to work in one of the universities. Bill Ayers. How many in this room are happy he's out talking at all the universities? Now, I will tell you, there is a little conflict between this side and Bill Ayers' side. They're not totally in agreement how all this should be done, because Bill Ayers is actually more of a progressive. And he's kind of got, I'll even give him a little bit of limits. The Gates Foundation is funding everything. Everything. And I'm going to tell you, I am not a happy camper, because you can go to the website for the Council of Chief School Superintendents, and all of a sudden on their website, on their header, they're bragging about their relationship with the Aspen Institute. If there's anybody in this room that doesn't know that George Soros's Open Society is funding the Aspen Institute, you definitely have to know that. So what are they doing in bed with the Aspen Institute? How about the information that Common Core standards by that name have been used in Bosnia since 2007? You know how I found out? A teacher in Bosnia emailed me. She found my website. Or how about the country of Georgia, outside of Russia? They've been working under No Child Left Behind since 2001. You think this isn't United Nations? Okay. In '96, when a chief came up with this whole thing, it was nothing but an idea. Standards had not been written. In 2007, it was still an idea. And I want to remind everybody here, we have our third Jeb Bush, Chief for Change, from his foundation as a Commissioner of Education. Where do we go for fairness? We have state legislators, and I'm sorry he's left. We have state legislators sitting in Tallahassee, writing and voting on education and charter school legislation that own charter schools, are gaining financial gains from charter schools by their legislation, and they are also serving on Jeb Bush's Foundation for Excellence. He touts it. Go to his website. Go under the Reformers tab. He's got pictures of all of them. How about Arnie Duncan? How about the president of the CFR? How about your state superintendents from around the country? How can you be separated from the politics within the foundation and your own legislation for your state? I'm here to tell you right now, most of you, I'm sure, know that the RNC put out a resolution against the Common Core standards. National RNC. Florida has been actively working to get each individual 67 counties of the RNCs to do the same thing. And a lot of them have already passed them. But now the threats are coming out. The phone calls to the head of the Tea Parties, to the head of the RNCs. You guys better play ball or else. I want to know what the or else is. The people doing this are calling for the Gates Foundation. The sad thing about Achieve is you still have some of our governors and legislators serving on that board. It's very interesting to go into these individual companies online. Always look for the board of directors. And if you don't know the name, go look them up. Follow the money are the three most important words you can use. This is their mission statement for the Common Core. To provide a consistent, clear understanding of what students are expected to learn so teachers and parents know what they need to do to help them. Help them? If you read about John Dewey and what the background of this is, the teachers are no longer really supposed to be teaching. Our children are going to be online all day. That's what virtual learning was all about. Not only is this hypnotizing to our children, have you tried getting a computer or a game away from your kids or your grandkids? How about an iPhone from your children? How many people do you know that are addicted to their phones? They do everything. You go to a restaurant and the whole family's sitting there with computers. They don't even talk anymore. It's called indoctrination. That's the whole process. These are the two consortia that are out there to provide information as a base. Florida proudly stood up and said, oh, we'll be in charge of PARC. So they have an office up in Tallahassee at the Board of Education. The gentleman's very nice. He told me he's getting paid out of the ARC money. So, you know, I don't have to worry about that coming out of the tax dollars. But the point is that our state is very deeply involved in this. Very deeply involved in this process. Some of the states are going for the other organization, but PARC has got most of the states for doing the tests. I can't tell you when we're actually going to be implementing this all over. They've already had to move it up 1 year. They're not ready. The tests aren't ready. What few textbooks are going to be printed aren't ready. They will tell you that the teachers get to pick what curriculum they use. There's no curriculum really been written yet. So what's been happening since all of these meetings from 10 years ago up to now, all of the Common Core things have been sliding in through the textbooks. Now I'm going to give you an example of textbooks. Have any of you seen the video on the book, Voices? Well, fortunately, I've been able to connect with groups all across this country that are fighting Common Core, with every breath they breathe all day long. And the girls in Utah found the first grade school was using this book called Voices. It's a simple sentence in the book. First graders, 6 years old. The sentence says, my mom blank cleaned my room. Now you had 2 words for choices, tells or nags. Any psychologist in the world will tell you that young children go for the negative. So now what have you done? You've created a sentence that says, my mom nags me to clean my room. Repetitively, in this type of teaching, you're building that wedge between the children and their parents. That's part of the plan, by the way. It's just a consistent, and they've been doing this through global warming. You are aware of that. I mean, our young children are walking around and with an attitude they almost hate us because we're killing the animals and we're killing the earth and we're killing the trees and we should all be dead. These little minds are very impressive. That's why they need to get away from the TV and the computers. Lock them up in the trunk of your car. Make them play. Make them go outside and ride their bike. Make them do something different. I have a friend in Flagler County. You guys need to listen to her, because I can't explain what she does. Her training is different than mine, but she can explain to you what this constant use of the computers and this online stuff is going to do to our children's brains. And it's also wearing, and it cuts off a portion in the back here if they sit at a certain angle for very many hours. And here again, you're losing parental control because those computers are going to stay in the schools. You're not supposed to see what they're learning or not learning. The math. Professor Jim Milgram is probably one of the highest rated mathematicians in this country. He was on the validation board for the math standards. He refused to sign off on them. He said it was a zoo. See, on the validation board and the people doing these things, they weren't all educators. That's the part that you have to question. I mean, this is what I want to question, why no one sitting on our state school board is an educator. There's something wrong with that picture. How do they know what our children need or don't need? You have two women sitting on that state school board that have been aligned with the Jeb Bush family, the Bush family, since George H.W. ran for president. Either as chief of staff, assistant chief of staff, and it's right there on their bio when you go to the state school board. It'll tell you exactly how involved they've been in the politics with that family. So if you've got Jeb Bush up here sitting with his foundation, and he's putting all this pressure coming down this way, who do you think they answer to? But because they're not elected, they're not answering to us. Algebra has been changed. They're no longer going to have it in the 8th grade. How is that bringing our children up? And they're splitting it. They get half of it in the 9th grade, half of it in the 10th grade. Dr. Milgram says that chances most of them are not going to get close to trig at that schedule. And yet they talk about the STEM program and building them up in math and science for engineering type things. Dr. Milgram states that they'll be actually 2 or more years behind international expectations by the 8th grade and only fall further behind as they go through grades 8 to 12. He feels that most of them, when they graduate, because of the combination of the English language and the math STEMs, they're not going to have an education level much past the 8th or 9th grade. Now, there's always exceptions. Don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying all our kids are going to walk out of there as zombies. A lot's going to depend on the parents they got at home and how things are being overseen. I think one of the most disheartening things to me is that Bill Gates went and walked to the national door of the National PTA and said, if you'll endorse Common Core, I'll give you $1 million. They said yes, and he gave them $1 million. So now you have to ask the question, what is the purpose of the PTA? Money these days is buying a lot. And I will tell you, if you want to get rich today, there is umpteen links to education to do it. This is your new math. If you've not had a child or seen a child do this, this is what they have to do now. They can come up with the same answer over here, but if they do, they're supposed to fail them because they didn't use the right formula. How about the new geometry? Has anybody got any idea how we come up with new geometry? Well, it was tried in the 1950s in the Soviet Union. And even their brightest math people couldn't figure it out and they dumped it. So why are we going to give it to our children? Is it to raise them up or dumb them down? School to Work program is a dumbing down. And your people that are brave enough will tell you it's a school to work, school to fields. Did you ever look what Cuba did with their kids? And they bragged about it. Their kids would go to school for 3 or 4 hours a day, and then they go to the tobacco factories and make cigars. And they would tell legislators in the United States what a great program that was, how their kids were learning 2 things at the same time. No, they were making money off of those little kids that were getting pennies to the hour. This is the formula of how they're going to be reading. They're taking literature away from them. Do you honestly believe, this is the schedule. This is laid out in the standards. Grade 4, 50-50. When they say informational, they're talking about reading training manuals, government bills, statutes, whatever they want to give them. And the other half is literature. Do you really think our kids are going to be interested to learn reading informational manuals? Then in grade 8, it goes to 45 and 55. Look, by the time you're in high school, you think they're going to keep their attention? Do you really think they'll be reading? No phonics, no spelling, no cursive. Whole word recognition and spell check. Phonics. Sandra Stotsky, she's another one of the very highly respected educators in this country. She was on the English language panel, and she also refused to sign off on the validation. She's really upset about this. She's now working with the Pioneer Institute and the Heritage Foundation to try to get the word out. She stated that Common Core's college readiness standards for the English language arts are cheap, empty skill sets and cannot lead to even a meaningful high school diploma. Let me ask you guys a question. How many of you in here believe that the majority of homeschooled kids are smarter than kids that are educated in traditional schools? I wish our legislator was still here. Because I asked legislators when we were in Tallahassee, if you honestly and truthfully wanted to raise our children up, you could have, number one, gone to Finland and gotten their standards in their curriculum, because they are the best in the world. Or you could have taken any one of these homeschool programs, converted it to what you needed, and you'd have had the same thing in all these schools at the basic same level of 1.5 to 2 years more advanced than what your children in traditional schools. The other thing that's going to happen, believe me, they thought of it all. The SATs and the ACT tests and the AP classes are being converted to Common Core. Your children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren cannot get away from this. Homeschool, charter school, private school, parochial school, it doesn't matter. If they stay within those, if they want to go to college, They got to take the SAT or the ACT test. If they've not been trained in Common Core, they're going to fail the ACT or the SAT. You can't get away from it. The data tracking. By Obama gutting this thing, and I know they like to tell us that it's state-led, and they're going to say it's state-led until whenever, because it gets the state legislators, they think, off the hook. Well, they just now, in 2013, started trying to pass legislation to cover their backsides. It's a little late. Because if you think about it, the standards were put in place and there's been changes made with no legislation. The state school board never held any hearings. There's a lot of people never even heard about Common Core until 6 months ago. So why the secrecy? Probably for what's happening right now. Originally, when the data mining part of the standards came out, it was only supposed to be 40 marks. Now it's up to 543 data points. We're talking about anything and everything. And as I said earlier, can be shared with anybody. And it's going to be. And you're talking about their social security numbers. What do you think they're going to do with their social security numbers from cradle to grave? Because that's what it's being called, cradle to grave. It will follow them to work. If Johnny gets in trouble at 9, they're building psychological profiles on our children through the computers and their mouse. It says so in the standards. If you read them, then you'll know exactly what's happening. Galvano did finally read the standards to learn about the data mining. Maybe that's why the bill died. I don't know. They're not talking. Don't ever think the Carnegie Institute is a good guy. They've been on the wrong side since the early 1900s. The Department of Education displayed photographs of actual technology that will be used on the students that the department's plan is fully implemented. How many of you heard about the little boy down in Polk County that got iris scanned? You know, I thank God every day that that mom sent me an email. She went through my website. She said, "What do I do?" And we sat and talked for 2 days. This is Memorial Day weekend. Your son comes home, 3:45, you get his backpack, and here's this letter from the school. We're going to do iris scanning on all our children on May 20th. That was the preceding Monday. They'd already done it. They did one elementary school, one middle school, and one high school, claiming that the reason why they were doing it was to get added security on the school buses. She and her husband went to the school Tuesday morning after Memorial Day. They were there at 8 o'clock. Informed by the principal he had nothing to do with it. It came from the school board. And the school board was saying, well, they've decided to do away with the program, and the security company has already destroyed all the scans. Prove that to me. That's what the mother said. Prove to me that you took my child's scan and all these other children and destroyed them. They couldn't do that. That's another cost. See, you see these schools that want our kids to start wearing bracelets to scan for their lunches? RFID chips? Or the kids in Missouri, that they put them on them, they want them to wear at home, said they wanted to know how much time they were spending and how many hours after they got home they were active or they were studying or whatever. They want them to wear bracelets too. Unfortunately, a lot of our younger parents don't even think about arguing with the school board. Me, I'd cut it off right away, but everybody wouldn't do that. But see, we don't believe that our government would do these things. I am not a conspiracy theorist. This is fact. And unfortunately, our legislators either are blind and deaf, or somebody's paying somebody off. You don't have a legislature like we do, and everybody go for something 100%. When you have so many people trying to get to them, to just talk to them, educate them, give them the proof, and they don't want to do it. FERPA, of course, was gutted, thanks to Obama. I will tell you that as long as they want to say it's state-led, when Obama jumped in there ready with all his plans on race to the top, that's when the federal government starts getting in there, and they were in there before that. But when they start jumping in that way, no, the control's all coming from up here, because he's blackmailing them. Some of them tried to back out, so then he threatened them. Oh, wait a minute, I already gave you some of the race to the top money, so now I'm going to withhold your Title I money. What do you think these governors are going to do? I'm very disappointed in Governor Scott. He was initially against Common Core. He hadn't read it, but what he'd heard, he was against it. Now all of a sudden he's supporting it. The real Common Core actually was written by special interests. You've got in fact, I'm having a hard time accepting that some of our legislators and businessmen out there are referring to our children as human capital. They say it's time that they got a return on their financial investment into education systems. Well, I thought we were all paying for education through our taxes, whether we had children or we didn't have children, or our children had grown up and left. We were always, if we had property taxes, we were paying for education. But they're looking at it. You can even find a paper out there, in fact I may have it with me, where they write a whole article about recouping their interest from this global economy through human capital. I think one of the biggest bottom lines on this is the fact that all these people that are willing to accept this haven't read it. They don't have a clue what they're doing. Not an idea of what's being put in. And I'm not saying we don't need to change our education. We certainly do, because No Child Left Behind really hurt our kids. And it's in every state. All states have FCAT tests. It's just that every state named them differently. You got to dig a little bit to try to find them, but they're there. The Common Core standards have a lot of problems. One of the biggest ones, and I like to go at this way, top is parental rights. Even if Common Core was not actually going to be in all stages of education, you're no longer going to have a choice, really and truthfully, of why put your children in a private or a parochial school? And by the way, a lot of the dioceses have took race to the top money, in case you didn't know it. You need to ask if you have children. See what happens when you sell your soul? That's another topic. The test costs have come down. Isn't that nice? They're down to about $52. Pearson decided that they needed to make some changes, so they recalculated because they heard too much murmuring, so they brought it down to about $52, $53 per test. And even at $8 per student per test in one state, that's a lot of money. We spend a lot of money on FCAT. The United States Constitution reserves control of education to the states. Do you know it's unconstitutional for them to do this? The School to Act clearly stated, and even Clinton is the one that signed that. They are not allowed, the federal government cannot implement anything that has to do with accountability, curricula, standards, tests, how they spend their education money. It's all laid out. How are they doing it? Race to the top dollars. Stimulus. There's always a way to get around. This is just a few that are supporting Common Core. I will tell you that if you remember on our last ballot, Amendment 8, did you ever really look at Amendment 8? It was actually about charter schools and voucher, but what saddened me was the fact that we had 2 senators and 1 House representative that put that bill out there. And 2 of the 3 were Catholic. And when you read the bill addressed the fact that almost all of Florida was prejudiced against Catholics and had been since the forming of the state. And this is why we needed to do Amendment 8 to give money to the churches for education. The background on that, Jeb Bush had tried to get that through since he was governor. It had even gone to the Florida State Supreme Court at one point, and they told him, you cannot separate our children. You cannot give to one what you would not give to all. And he just waited around, and they slowly got it out again. Thank God it failed. That $700 million that we got originally, I'm not sure if it's been all handed out yet or not. There is a report that the state had to file with the federal government in 2011-2012 year to explain their successes so far with the Race to the Top money and changes, their failures, what they were still planning on doing. In that report, it stated that the governor held back 98% of that money for contracts. So if I'm to believe what was in there, then he held that money back to put into the budget to be able to pay people like the data tracking people, Park, and some of these other ones, that the money's still being used for education, it's just not being dispersed through the county. But we haven't been able to find that report yet. That one's been, the follow-up to it's being tightly held. HB 709 passed. It was a very bad bill. It included the Senate Bill 1630. It had all the changes, and I have papers back there that will tell you some of the changes. Now, there's one set of papers back there that relates to the school board statutes and how they have to relate in the individual counties. There's another one back there that will tell you how the statutes were changed to accommodate Common Core coming along. It's on their websites. They're not hiding it. This timeline keeps getting moved up. I actually kind of wonder what's going to happen with the Race to the Top money, because did any of you see the story where the state of Florida just lost a huge lawsuit? They had hired this company to build this new gigantic website to accommodate all of Common Core. And along the way, part of what the state was mandated to do, they were late, and the contracts kept falling back and falling back and falling back, and they finally sued the state. They had already paid them $1.75 million, I believe. They lost the lawsuit. They need to pay another $2.3 million. Now, Tony Bennett wants to take that out of the Race to the Top money. Why he asked the head of the communications department within the Department of Education if it was okay to use Race to the Top money, I have no idea. It makes no sense. I wouldn't think he'd have the authority to say yes or no. So I don't know where the money's coming from. We need to educate ourselves. I would love for you guys to go to my website, send me an email through the contact form. I'll put your email address in the database. I promise you it's not going to anybody. And pick your niche. If you can do more, that's fine. If you can do less, you know, I don't care. When we need phone calls to Tallahassee or might need a trip or we need emails going out, the last time we did a Twitter batch, 9.3 million tweets went out against Common Core across this country. This last legislative session, we had Randy Osborne and John Holman up there working for us as lobbyists. They worked hard. The legislators were begging them to tell us to get off the phones, get off our computers. They were absolutely mobbed. That's okay? Are they paying attention? No. They're not. Our children are not common. And I resent someone saying they are. Our children grow at such different levels, in so many different directions. They're these little individual things. What the heck, guys? We've been sending our kids to school with total strangers for 13 years. For how many years? And a lot of our kids survived some of the garbage, some of them didn't. I'm here to tell you we have our first graduating class of dumbed-down kids as occupiers that have been out on the streets for a year. They don't know who they're voting for. They only know they're one party or the other. They have no idea what the agenda is. They don't know what they're doing. They have no respect. They have no morality. That is the communist way, you know. Take God out. God was a big part. Build a bridge between the children and their parents. And then you add to that the idea that anything they think is right. If you want to say 2 + 2 is 5, nobody has the right to tell you any different, even if you hold up 2 fingers on each hand. Quickly, I'd like to go through this because Robert Mueller wrote the World Core Curriculum for the United Nations in the 60s. A new world order is rising. It has no tolerance for Christianity, traditional values, or historical facts. And something I normally say at the beginning of these, and I didn't do it, I guess because the legislator was here and I got kind of distracted. I know I've talked a lot about Jeb Bush, but I'm in Florida. And let me tell you what, the Heritage Foundation, the Principles, the American Principles Project, the Pioneer Institute, Freedom Works, Americans for Prosperity, even though I don't trust the Koch brothers, they all know what we're up against because of Jeb Bush. His money's coming from somewhere. Do you know that the governor of Pennsylvania got a letter the other day threatening him from ExxonMobil that if he didn't start acting right and supporting the Common Core, do you remember how much money I've sent to your state? Look how many different places we've put money, education, and all this other stuff. Basically, straighten up your act or we can move out of Pennsylvania. If you think this isn't driven by money, and that's what we're up against. I'm not against anybody being rich. More power to them. But when you use that as a mechanism to blackmail, intimidate, and degrade people, but that's what's happening within our own state now. With the chairman of our Tea parties and our RNC committees being contacted and told they need to tell their people to straighten up. What do we have, guys? Either we get our Republicans to change their minds, or we're lost. Because that's all we've got to depend on. That's what's up there. And I can tell you, there's three really good Democrats in this state that are totally against everything they've been doing with education for the last 10 years. They're not union. The World Community was officially born in 1945 when Alger Hiss served as the Secretary General of the United Nations. The following year, the NEA helped establish UNESCO as the primary creator of an international education system. Let me tell you something about the NEA. If you want to get angry, take one of my business cards, send me an email, and I'm going to send you a video clip from 2007 when their attorney was giving his address to the National Convention and stood there and told them that it was not about what they could offer to the classroom. It was not about their individual creativity that they had to give to our children. And it certainly was not about the children. It's about the 3.2 million of you sending us money every year that we can use politically for you. That's what the NEA does for the teachers.
Define NEA, please.
National Education Association, that's another one of the unions. It's teachers union, it's been around, that was the first. This stuff, Bill Gates signed an agreement, I have a copy of it with his initials on every page, with UNESCO in 2004 to get our education system where it is today. This is what it's all about. The same wording. Global standards, guidelines, benchmarks, assessment techniques. Does anybody in here know that Bill Gates gave the District of Hillsborough County in 2006 $500 million to test the accountability on the teachers that's being implemented in the Common Core? The superintendent of schools in Hillsborough County sits on Jeb Bush's foundation. NEA shares UNESCO's goals, always has. They've always been in the back supporting them on every action. You get into the World Organization of Teaching and how much influence UNESCO has. Do you have any question now that International Baccalaureate's a good curriculum? International Baccalaureate is full of communism. Technically, if you ask an expert that analyzed it, he will tell you it's a form of religion. Do you have any idea how much your school district pays for IB if you have it? Well, we were in Volusia County up until last year, They had 2 high schools on IB, approximately 725 students, and they spent over $1 million a year. If you have an IB school, it costs you $10,600 up front every year just to say you're an IB school, let alone all the fees for their testing and registration and everything else. And it's all going back to UNESCO. Every bit of it. The NEA and UNESCO promotes abortion, disarmament. One of the contestants in Miss America contest last night said, you know, it's not a bad thing them spying on us. At least I know somebody good's watching me. Glenn had fun with that this morning. These are just a few of the ones across the country. Believe me, there's a lot more against Common Core. We have formed a national coalition. We're sharing bills. We have access to people that can take the other states' bills and convert them to our statutes, trying to save us time. Don't know where we're going to be or if we're going to be able to stop this, but we need you guys to help. If it's nothing but when we need emails sent out, phone calls made. There is a flyer back here for the rally at the end of the month. Down in Orlando, they're having, their side is having the National Common Core Convention. So Freedom Works is paying for us to show up down there and have a training session and a rally. We're going to protest outside the hotel on Saturday, June 29th. So there's a flyer back on the table if you think you'll be interested.
There's also the Republican Party of this county is having a Common Core public forum on the 27th, and it'll be in Tavares Civic Center, and then later next month there'll be a similar one in Claremont.
Well,
And if anybody wants details can ask me afterwards.
Who's sponsoring that?
The Republican Party,
Okay.
REC of Lake County.
Well, I
I'm
will
a
tell you,
committee member.
back on the table, I have questions that I made up that you can take to your school board. You can ask them within 3 minutes. You just go one right after the other. Have you told your taxpayers? Have you told your taxpayers? Have you told your taxpayers? It's getting you recorded and on the minutes. You go back every month and ask the same questions. Or you can take them and divide them up in 3, 4, 5, however many your school board allows you to speak, and you can take turns reading them. You know they're not going to answer you, but you're on the record. Maybe if you do it enough, they'll bother to call you. I will tell you that there was a swarm of us that went to the governor's office when we were there in last session, left our names, our business cards, our contact, and not even one underling called us back. And they knew we were there for Common Core. We said so. No contact, no nothing. Okay. Any questions? Yes, ma'am.
Observations, kind of. I am the National Homeschool Representative for the Foundation for American Christian Education. I started homeschooling in 1982 for 22 years. I saw that they came into the homeschool conventions and offered K-12 and offered free computers and free curriculums to 4 homeschoolers, and 50% of the homeschoolers took the bait. I know that when I sent my oldest child to college, all 4 are college graduates, the first one hit Embry-Riddle, and in 4 years, he denounced his faith and his family. My oldest daughter survived Florida State. My youngest son survived Florida State. But the third child went to cosmetology, which wasn't bad. But they actually started this in Illinois when I was in the 4th grade. I was a really good math student, and they brought in new math. It made no sense. For 3 years, they screwed up my mind, and from then on, I was in the dummies class for math, Clearview High School. When God opened my eyes to Goals 2000, I realized I had a choice, and it makes me sad that there aren't young mothers and fathers here
I
even
know.
learning about it.
I know.
Because, and part of the reason for that is they are struggling so hard to make ends meet and to raise those kids. Do you think any of them, either one of them, can stop their job and stay home?
They can't.
They can't.
No, they can't. No, they can't. Not only that, your young teachers, we have school board members that are starting to come out and say, please don't use my name yet, but this is what I think. So we can publish what he's saying, and you can still leave the kind of block out part of the school board emblem so they don't know where this poor soul's coming from. They're threatening our teachers with firing them if they talk to parents about Common Core, or if they some places, even if they talk to anyone about Common Core. Some of the districts are asking them to sign affidavits that they won't talk. We had one school that came out and were trying to even force the young kids to sign affidavits. They wouldn't talk with their parents about Common Core. See, you're crossing the line here. This has become a whole different ball game. This is not just giving our kids standards or curriculum or textbooks that are going to elevate them in the global world where we need more engineers. Not when you're giving them what you can prove is in the standards. And then when you look at the fact that the people doing all this haven't read the standards, how do you do this? How do we trust them? Yes, ma'am.
What does this have to do with, are you teaching ready?
No, I haven't heard that.
Same thing.
That's college ready and career ready.
Okay. I'm telling you, I have so much up here that I don't, but I was going to tell you that I have felt for a long time that the government was going to go after the homeschools because they don't have any control.
No, yeah.
That there is no control and they can't stand that. And they know that children are smarter. And there's a reason for that.
But where it was hard to get a homeschool student into a college, now half the booths at a homeschool convention is a college. They want your smart kids to get rid of all that foundation in college. They want to do away with what we did. Now, an interesting fact you need to know, and I'll show my allegiance here with this statement, because if you know the name of Pat Hart, and in the 90s you had a Christian majority on the school board in Lake County, and it caused a national and international fight.
America first.
Yes. They asked me to review every history book and social studies book in the county. And I went to the school board under police escort in '93. I told them that there wasn't a shred of American history or patriotism in these books. In fact, it was really revealing to me that in an AP course history book, 2 weeks after Bill Clinton was elected, there's his big picture in the book. How could they get it printed that fast, I asked myself. So there at the school board, we had 3 national television stations and Pat Robertson's CBN. And I stood up, gave my report that absolutely not. Our history stops at 1965. It goes no further back. There's no mention of George Washington, much less the Constitution. And if you ask any lawyer in the United States, have you read the Constitution, 2% will say yes. Are we teaching the Constitution in our schools? No. So they can violate it all they want.
Yeah, but do you really know the real reason why I believe they're not? Because if our children don't understand what the founders went through to give us what we've had for over 200 years that I might add worked, then our children don't have any allegiance to this country. This is why you're finding the Muslims so easy to convert our children. Little Muslim kids, when they go to mosque, they're told that their leading thing that they should be doing is recruiting their school friends. So if you don't have an allegiance to your country, they're breaking down your system with your parents. You know, and then they lay out something like the Muslim religion is something that's peaceful and, you know, you have all these things. Okay, we had the deal here again in Hillsborough County last year, where the teacher let the imam come in. She's been doing it for 3 years. Now, my question to the school board was he talking about Sharia, or was he just talking about Muslims? He didn't bring up Sharia. They're not going to tell those children what Sharia really is. But the point is, this man was a wanted man. They didn't send permission notes home. They're doing all of these things without any permission slips. And you and I both know our kids couldn't even practically blow their nose if they didn't have a permission slip 20 years ago. They couldn't do anything. So,
yes, well, I can attest to this. Number one, you said about the parents not coming to the meetings. I've been at the school board meetings here recently because of some issues that have been going on in Lake County, and I've witnessed it for myself. Second of all, I have 2 children. One is in elementary school, one is in high school, 7.5 years between the 2 of them. And I can tell you right now, sitting here, that it is so true. I can see the difference between my youngest, what's going on with him, and my oldest. And I can already see it happening. I also know that the textbooks don't come home.
that's right. And neither
Oh,
will
this
the
is the classroom set. Really?
Yes.
Oh, okay, but the last time when I saw the book for my oldest, which was in 6th grade, now he is now in 10th, going into the 11th, I saw a geography book that he brought home, and it was amazing because it just so happened that it was on a subject of like world religion, and the majority of it was about the Muslims.
Yes, it was.
And
I will
this is
tell you that
2013, and that was how many years ago? And it just recently has come back to me. I have not forgotten it, and I'm getting hot just sitting here thinking about it because I'm telling you now, they are trying to ingrain this stuff into my kids' heads. So what I have to do constantly as a parent is I have to go against the science that they're teaching them, the history that they don't get, the geography or that they're trying to instill is basically all of this world Muslim
I will tell you,
ethnicity
it's the homeschool
mindset.
parents that are out here against Common Core.
Against it, but you know, the thing you don't see is in 3 hours at home, I don't care if that's in the morning or at night when you come home from work, you'll do 100% better than what that kid's going to get at school. 100%. And it wasn't, they wouldn't let me take my child's book out of the classroom that first day I walked in.
You paid for it.
Good job.
I did, and it was, and there's no children in this room. You know why I homeschooled? And it was like, boom, God just laid it in my lap. I got saved on a Thursday. On a Monday, I was at Taveri Elementary. And I asked to go to the classroom. No, you can't. I asked to see the book. No, they're in the classroom. You can't. And God reminded me they're going to start teaching my 3rd grade sex ed in the 3rd grade. And before being saved, that didn't bother me. Now it was kind of, yeah, I was kind of bugged by it. So I went to the, excuse me, yes. I said, I want to see it. He took me in his office. I read one paragraph, and it said, teachers are in no way to instruct in morals in this class. You're to teach that homosexuality, lesbianism,
Yep.
and bestiality are alternate lifestyles. I closed the book and said, I want my kids.
Yep.
And that's where I started.
Let me tell you, there's so much of this, and that's why, and I don't normally bring this word up, because it's so convoluted, and that's Agenda 21. But I will tell you that the immorality and this push for the gay, lesbian, all of that, look at it. It's depopulation, for one thing.
Yeah.
Then you look at Bill Gates. Go research some of the vaccinations he's pushing off on these poor people in Africa.
Paying for the drugs and giving
He's
them
got one that's going out there now that has within it a hormone that most women develop when they're pregnant. It's a protection hormone. But if you give it to women who are not pregnant, and you give it to them in 3 doses, telling them that it's tetanus shot, it builds up antibodies, and they can't get pregnant at all.
Oh, my.
I'm telling you, Bill Gates is evil.
I'm sorry.
He is, oh yeah, but Bill Gates
Rockefeller.
has run around this country for years with his money, telling everybody what a really cool guy he is. And he's not. And when these people claim to be eugenists, I call them slimy snakes. And I'll be honest with you, when I go to Tallahassee, there's a few of them. I don't even want to get near because I'm afraid the slime will rub them. Yes, ma'am.
Do we have,
I'm very,
I'm sorry.
do you
I'm
have
sorry
any,
that's
Go ahead.
Go
We'll beat each other up on this.
Fair tax rules.
are there any talking points that we can have to talk to our young adult parents?
I have one sheet back there that says, did you know? And it's spelled on both sides. Let them go do their research.
Yeah.
The bookmarks, we just take a donation for the bookmarks, and I need to get some more made because I don't have enough for everybody, I don't think. But on the back of the bookmarks are the main points against Common Core. So when somebody says to you, and this is really cool for the ladies because you can keep them in your purse, I am going to do up some of the 3x5 or the bigger 4x6 cards with this. But it gives the talking points. When somebody says to you, well, what's wrong with Common Core? You can just flip it over and it's got it right there. The data tracking, the no legislative input, all the different items, the fact that they'll be held back, that they're changing all this stuff. They're just very quick little points that you can give to them. And then put it back on them. Say, take this, give it to them. Take this, go do your own research. Because it is out there. It is, you can go to the Common Core Standards website. You can download all of this stuff. What I do want you to download is this one. Go to the Pioneer Institute and download this. This will give you everything that the highly rated educators did in analyzing the standards and what is wrong with them.
What is this?
It's called Controlling Education from the Top.
I really want to thank Diane for coming tonight. We really appreciate it. She has lots and lots of handouts back on the table for you to pick up, and also her business cards are there and all the information is there. The back doors, all the library doors are locked except for the back door. If you notice, they locked us into this room, but there is a door that you can go out in the very back. And we will have, we're the third Monday of every month, the Republican women meet, and we're trying desperately to get all kinds of education forward this year and next year and the months and years to come, because we think it's critically important that we have education and knowledge. But we do meet the third Monday. In the summer, we have special events that we do. We go to different restaurants just to talk politics, because we don't normally do that through the year. We have structured meetings like this. In July, we are meeting at the Garden Gate. In August, we go back to our normal. Oh, yeah. August is Vincent. July is the Garden